response out there. Glendale police confirming at least one victim at this hour. It's unclear whether anyone has been arrested.
Our Nicole Grigg is also on scene, and she recorded video for us. She joins us in just a moment over the phone. We want to take a look at this video, though, that Nicole sent us first here, just showing some of the police presence and obviously an ambulance arriving there. Nicole, I know you're on the phone here. What's the situation out there right now? We know businesses have been locked down.
Steve, well, I'm right outside the parking lot, just outside the Banana Republic store, and it's very chaotic out here right now. I can tell you personally, I saw two people being put into ambulances. One was a woman, another was a man. They were both put on a stretcher. They both had gunshot wounds, taken by ambulance just a few minutes ago. You know, I'm just on one side of the outlet, but just looking down in the distance, I can see police presence each way. Now, this is happening at the Tanger Outlets across from the Westgate Entertainment Center. I can tell you that where I'm at, a police officer came up to me and told me where I am, that the scene is actually still active. One man here told me that multiple people are inside these stores hiding right now. But that's what I can tell you right now. Dozens of people standing out here in the parking lot trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Again, police telling me less than 10 minutes ago that this is considered still an active situation. They did not provide any other details, only asking us to use caution where we are.
Nicole, we know the Tanger Outlets are there off the 101 and Glendale. Can you give us a better idea of within that mall area where the most active situation is going on right now?
Well, where I came up off of, it was just right across from Westgate off of 95th Avenue. The stores that I'm looking at would be the Coach Outlet, the Michael Kors Outlet, Banana Republic, Gap Factory. So I'm on that side, closest to 95th Avenue, but I can tell you that police are scattered across this entire perimeter, every direction that I look.
And Nicole, active situation there doesn't necessarily mean active shooter. Police certainly have an enormous amount of law enforcement officers on the scene right now, but nobody's given you an indication that there's still somebody in the mall with a gun intending to do harm.
Correct. According to the people who have been here the longest, they have not seen anyone being arrested yet. One man told me that they were indicating that it was multiple shooters. However, that is not confirmed at this time, but I just want to be clear that what people are hearing right now, right outside of the parking lot. I can tell you personally, I did see two victims.
Nicole, thanks so much, and stay on the line with us. Obviously, when police have a situation like this, they're going to assume the worst and really look for an active shooter here until they can confirm just exactly what this was. This may have been some sort of domestic dispute. It may have been a specifically targeted attack, but they have to assume the worst here, and that's why you see this very large police presence on scene, as police are going to absolutely make sure that they don't have an active shooter, that they don't have a threat still out there before they can release any of these people from these stores, and that's a process that could take a while.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you just take a look from the Cliff Castle Chopper there, you see how many cars are in the parking lot, and it gives you an idea of just how busy this mall is, especially this time of year when we know it's our tourist season and also this is spring break still for some schools out there. So this is a busy time of day, a busy, very popular mall area. Again, right now, Glendale police are asking all of the businesses in this area to lock down and people to stay out of the area. This Tanger Outlet Mall here, it encompasses about 90 plus outlet stores. There are at least a dozen restaurants in this complex as well. So that is a big undertaking and potentially a lot of people there.
Yeah, logistically, it's a nightmare for officers because it's one of these outdoor malls, and you can see it's got at least a half dozen entrances, if not more. So if somebody were to carry out an attack and then try to escape, they've got lots of routes that they can take and lots of ways that they can get out of there. That's why you see so many officers surrounding it, and they're going to to keep everybody inside until they sort out who's who and make sure that they don't have a threat here. So Nicole Grigg once again telling us that she has seen at least 2 people with gunshot wounds being taken from the scene. No word on how seriously those people are hurt. Glendale police telling us just a little bit earlier that they have at least 1 victim. And again, they said at least 1 victim, so they know that they have at least 1 person that has been taken to the hospital with a gunshot wound. But again, we don't know whether this is an active scene. We don't know whether this is somebody who is specifically targeted, and we don't know whether there is a threat still on scene. But obviously an enormous police presence at this mall.
And as you take a look at the Cliff Castle chopper here, you'll notice that our shot is fairly wide, and we're doing that intentionally because, first of all, we obviously don't want to violate anything that may be delicate for the police right now, and we also want to get a good feel of what is going on there on the ground before we zoom in too closely. We are aware that kids might be watching at home this time of day as well. So we're going to keep monitoring this situation. Also want to show you, why don't we bring that tweet that we had up from Glendale Police if we can, and show you exactly what they put out just a short time ago. There it is, shooting at Tanger Outlets near 95th Avenue in Glendale. At this time, we have at least 1 victim. Again, our own Nicole Grigg saying that she personally saw 2 victims with what she believed to be gunshot wounds being loaded into an ambulance. Glendale Police continue. We are asking all businesses to lock down and people to stay out of the area, and then some media staging information there at the bottom for media outlets.
And of course, echoes of what happened at the Westgate Mall just down the road from here just a little over, not quite 2 years ago, May 20th in 2020. That was when there was an active shooter on the ground there for a solid 20 minutes or so before police were finally able to take that person into custody. That was a situation that was just a nightmare for people in less than 2 years ago. Now dealing with what appears to be another shooting in a very public place like the Tanger Outlets, and again, at least 2 victims that we are aware of, just based on our own eyewitness account from our reporter Nicole Grigg, who was on scene there. Obviously, everybody, no idea how many people may have been at the mall at the time, but the lockdown means that all of these businesses are going to lock their doors. People are going to stay away from the windows, away from the doors, and try to hide as much as they can and stay out of the way and let police do their job. And that should really go for anybody who's thinking about venturing out and heading to this area as well. Glendale Police say, please try to avoid the area right now. There's an enormous police presence there, and even if you have plans in this area in the immediate couple of hours here, you really want to stay away and let police do their work, because at this point we're still trying to assess what kind of threat there is, if any.
Yeah, and we have some other camera viewpoints that we want to show you right now. Some of our ADOT cameras, hopefully giving us some different vantage points, just trying to give you a look at what is going on there. And we're seeing this for the first time right along with you. So, all right, we've just lost that shot. But again, let's go back up to the Cliff Castle chopper right now. And again, I draw your attention to how many cars there are in the parking lot. Gives you an idea of what an undertaking it is to get these stores in lockdown and get everyone into a safe location as police continue to investigate and find whoever it is they're looking for responsible for this.
Yeah, an enormous logistical operation for police as well. We were able to see some of these earlier pictures of just so many officers on the scene, and the first question is going to be assigning who does what and making sure that tactically you have all of these entrances covered and that you can sort out for people that are being taken out. And if we could zoom in there a little bit, it looks like some folks actually making their way out. It's
being
not
walked
clear.
Out, it looks like
Being walked out. We want to get a little bit closer view to see that, but you can also see a large number of officers there on the ground staying outside the entrances, and that's an important indication that they don't necessarily have an all clear here. Very likely tactical teams are making their way around the mall, trying to assess threats, trying to check on everybody, trying to make sure that if there is an active shooter, this person hasn't blended in with the crowd or dashed into a store, making sure there's not a hostage situation. So many things that police have to deal with, and it's going to take some time for them to really sort that out. The good news is that since the initial report of this shooting, we haven't had any additional reports of anybody being hurt or killed here. But obviously there's a lot of people that have been moved out to the parking lot here, just standing around waiting to get some sort of all clear. Some of these folks may not be able to connect with loved ones or get to their car and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a waiting game for these folks.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing is sort of the body body language of the officers that are standing there and talking to each other, and also the body language of the people that were walking out of there. This was not, as we've seen in other active shooter situations, where you see people kind of, low to the ground, running for the parking lot. That's not the body language we're seeing from the people that the Cliff Castle chopper just showed us, moving away from the mall area out into the parking lot, the shot you see there right now. And also the officers sort of gathered in small groups, indicating that perhaps this is not a situation where they are guns drawn going store to store at this point.
Yeah, the body language tells a big story there, because in these active situations, you're going to see these officers taking cover. They're going to have the guns drawn. Obviously, they're going to be in a much more aggressive stance, and it doesn't appear that they're doing that at this point. But again, just a very scary situation when you think about it in a public place like this, on a crowded, beautiful day, so many people out right now, and shots ring out, and nobody knows why. You can imagine just the fear and the panic that set in for people as they tried to take cover in all of this. We're efforting to get Nicole Grigg back on the phone. She's obviously working the scene, trying to get a little bit more information. Nicole, I know you're limited because police are holding way back from the scene at this point, but is that assessment of the body language pretty accurate? You can usually tell when police think there is still an active threat versus when they are really in sort of a fact-finding mop-up operation and that sort of thing. It doesn't appear that they're taking these positions tactically like there's still an active shooter in here.
Steve, I would agree with that statement that you're saying. I was also at the Westgate shooting just a few years ago, and, you had the cops running everywhere with their AK-47s and rifles. However, police did push me back again, warning me that this is still an active, situation. I can tell you personally, I have seen 2 victims out here. I saw a woman. She was loaded onto a stretcher, taken by ambulance. And then a younger guy, probably in his 20s, also shot, put in the back of an ambulance and taken away also. The parking lot, I can tell you, that's what I'm walking through right now. It's pretty crowded. There's a lot of cars here. It's a nice day here in Phoenix. So, of course, you can imagine, like you said, how many people are out here. Still a very active situation. Every direction I look, there's fire, there's DPS, there's Glendale police. Where I am, I can tell you that the police officers have kind of spread out, and I don't see them. But yes, their body language, some of them standing around. I saw some just giving a little fist pump. So I don't know if the threat is over yet. They're not speaking with us yet. But that's what I can tell you right now on the ground.
Nicole, can I ask you, we saw a small group of people making their way from the mall area into that parking lot that you're where you are just a short time ago. And again, talking about body language, they weren't running, they were walking. There didn't seem to be an enormous amount of urgency. Are you getting the sense that the stores are still locked down in the area? Are you getting the sense that police are bringing groups of people out into the parking lot area?
So the fact that there is not a big amount of people out in the parking lot, I would assume that they are still inside these stores, because there are dozens of stores here. So I would just expect it to be, families showing up, people showing up like I've seen in the past, trying to make sure that their loved ones, their teenagers, working, and usually these retail jobs are okay. But right now it still looks like it's pretty locked down. I'm not seeing people coming out. I know you guys saw it from the chopper, but I would just expect the parking lot to be a little bit busier given the circumstances. And yeah, it's pretty quiet out here. A lot of people on the phone, a couple people who saw those victims standing out here as well, clearly upset about what they just saw.
We should note we are watching video from the Cliff Castle chopper right now. That appears to be the DPS helicopter. I can tell you that helicopter is flying a lot lower than we as a commercial operation are typically allowed to fly. It appears to be only a few hundred feet off the ground and circling closely over this area. It appears to be looking kind of away from the mall, actually, in some of the desert areas just beyond there. Not sure what they are looking for. Obviously, we're watching this just along with you, but law enforcement obviously saw a need to bring in a helicopter and flying very, very low as if they're, and they've been circling as if they're looking for something. But again, we don't know why they are circling in that area. This is one of those situations where Glendale police are going to very quickly call in other agencies and ask for help, and that could be anything from the State Police Highway Patrol to neighboring jurisdictions, people, Peoria and that sort of thing coming in. But this is an interesting wrinkle here as we see this DPS helicopter circling over really some desert areas not far away from this mall, as if they believe there may be something to look for in there.
Yeah, if they are still looking for someone, perhaps establishing a perimeter around the mall area just to make sure that no one takes off and gets away from the area that they are potentially looking for. And we keep saying one person, but this could be more than one person as well. And want to give you some new video just coming in, obviously on the ground there, and it appears to be rescue crews in the distance there, and you see a stretcher on the left side of your screen. I don't know right now if this is what Nicole Grigg encountered when she first came to the scene, where she said she saw two people who she believed to have gunshot wounds, a man and a woman, being worked on and loaded onto an ambulance. But perhaps this is that video. We're going to try and get some clarification on that, but you do see the police tape up right there. And again, one more time going back and showing you that DPS helicopter that's circling the area. That's the 101 that they're crossing there right now. If you're familiar with the area, this is like State Farm Stadium, and the outlets are all kind of right in that area off the freeway near Glendale Avenue there. And again, we've been watching this helicopter for a few moments kind of do big sort of looping circles around the area and some of the desert and the development that is obviously going on right there as well. So we don't know what the situation is as far as any suspects potentially right now, but from Nicole Grigg, who was on the scene in the parking lot there, she told us that based on just the sheer number of people that are in the parking lot right now, she believes that the lockdown going on in the stores and restaurants at that mall is still going on. And again, there are 90 plus stores that are part of this Tanger Outlets, and at least a dozen restaurants in this complex as well. So that is a lot of people locked down right now. You see some of the people who've made their way into the parking lot here, but this looks like it will be going on for a while, Steve.
Yeah, these folks look like they're parked there. Either they've been held there by police or they're waiting for loved ones or something like that, but they're all sort of gathered in this one area. And when you have a situation like this, officers are going to want to really sort through everybody, especially if they don't know if they're looking for a shooter. They don't want somebody to blend in with the rest of the crowd and be able to make their escape. And so they're going to check out each one of these folks and talk to them a little bit and probably ask a lot of questions about who they are and why they're there and that sort of thing before these folks are released. But what a terrifying situation for people at that mall. And you can see just an enormous number of officers there kind of gathered under the trees.
Yeah, and it appears, were those officers under the trees, or was that another group of people that were making their way out of that mall? It was a little hard to see because the helicopter is obviously moving around and trying to give us every vantage point possible right now. But if you look between the buildings right now, you do not see a lot of movement going on. Kind of those pedestrian pathways linking the various buildings there and the various stores. So that's another indication that this lockdown situation continues.
About 35 minutes ago is when Glendale police put out that initial call that a shooting had occurred at Tanger Outlets. Again, this is 95th Avenue in Glendale, and at the time saying there was at least one victim, and that they are asking all businesses to lock down and for people to stay out of the area. This is some of the video from earlier. You can see that ambulance taking off. That was shot by Nicole Grigg, who was just in the area at the time. And again, it's going to be a long process for people. The good news that we have is that in the last 30 minutes or so, after that initial report of a shooting, we haven't heard any additional reports of shootings, and we're not seeing that sort of frenzied atmosphere that unfortunately we saw in this area a little less than 2 years ago, just over at Westgate, when they had an active shooter on the scene there. That was obviously a much different story than what we're seeing here. But yeah, it looks like more people are being slowly released, and so Generally, that means that officers are going store to store and unlocking the doors, making sure there's not a threat inside those stores, and then slowly letting people leave the mall. But again, it's not the sort of frenzied atmosphere. You know, in an active shooter situation, we're unfortunately used to seeing people come out with their hands up and show that they're not a threat to officers here. That does not appear to be the case. These people are being taken out of the mall and at least being allowed outside into this parking lot.
And you'll note again that the people are walking, as you noted, they don't have their hands up. They're not being hustled out of the mall area and into the parking lot as if there were still any kind of active shooter situation going on here. They really are effectively walking and strolling, and we just saw a woman pushing a baby stroller there, and there isn't that sense of urgency that you would anticipate if this was an active shooter situation and police were actively rushing to get as many people as they possibly could out of this mall area. And as we continue to watch this from our Cliff Castle chopper, you can see more and more people slowly making their way out to the parking lot. It's certainly going to be a long afternoon for them because no doubt police are going to want to talk to as many people as they can who may have seen anything, heard anything, in any way can help round out the picture and give them a better idea of exactly what happened out here at the Tanger Outlets off the 101 and Glendale earlier this afternoon.
And again, this went out initially, and the initial reports are often wrong, but initially this was called out as an active shooter. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. Eyewitness accounts are sometimes wrong. People call, obviously, in emergencies and panic situations, and so we don't really know that there is still an active shooter. But all indications are at this point that there is not, and that they are just slowly doing their due diligence, going store to store, letting people out of here, letting people call their loved ones and let them know they're okay and that they're safe. And we know there are at least 2 victims with gunshot wounds, but we don't know how serious those folks are. Yeah.
We're also working to find out exactly where those 2 victims were taken, what the closest trauma hospital is. Not just any hospital can take gunshot victims. That is usually a hospital that is set up to take a trauma situation. And so we're going to work to find out where those 2 victims were taken, and exactly we're trying to work as well and find out exactly what the situation is on the ground there as that crowd grows larger and larger in the parking lot and more people are released there at the Tanger Outlets.
And we have been watching, and I'm not sure if that's still an active situation there, but we've been watching the DPS helicopter circling in an area nearby. It appears to be, and I'm not sure of this 100%, but it appears that it's that area where they're doing construction on what's supposed to be a new water park and recreation area that's being built in the Westgate area. It looks like that's an active construction site, and it appears that this chopper is circling over that and some desert areas, which would be a little bit to the north and even across the freeway from the Tanger Outlets. But this is still a situation where police are asking everybody, if you don't have to be in this area, please don't. Stay away from the area and avoid that situation if you can, because police are still trying to sort this out and give them some room to work.
Yeah, and our Nicole Grigg was obviously on the scene shortly after this happened, and she was sending back some of the video that you've been watching with us this afternoon. When we talked to her just a few moments ago, she said as best she could tell from her vantage point on the ground, and let's remember she is being kept back by the police tape as well, but this was the active part of the mall where this seemed to be happening was near the Coach store and the Michael Kors store. She said the bulk of the activity seemed to be coming from that part of the mall. And again, there's that DPS Ranger helicopter that we've been tracking that seems to have been sort of circling the area over and over again.
Yeah, and pretty aggressive flight path too for this helicopter. It's only a few hundred feet off the ground, and again, typically not an altitude where most commercial helicopters are allowed to fly. But this is a guy who's flying very, very low. Obviously, it certainly appears, though, they are looking for something. What they are looking for, or someone perhaps, is really unclear. We haven't gotten that initial report, anything other than that initial report from law enforcement. We are being told that there's a media briefing that's going to be coming shortly, but again, we don't know for sure when police will be able to provide more details. Obviously, it's more important to make sure the situation is secure, make sure they've tended to anybody who may be hurt here, and continue to work this scene just to make sure that everybody remains safe.
Another big group of people coming out now. You can see as it seems like police are working working methodically, going, as you said earlier, from store to store and releasing groups of people to come out. But again, the body language right now indicating that the active threat portion of this seems to be over, because they are walking. Their arms are down. We don't see them rushing. We don't see their arms up in the air. They're just sort of walking carefully, slowly back out into the parking lot area, where they will presumably be waiting for quite a while, because I'm sure they're kind of trying to keep everyone in one area and not just release them sort of willy-nilly into the parking lot, especially with that DPS Ranger helicopter up overhead. One of the thoughts I had as I was watching him go around was that perhaps the helicopter was making a little bit of concentric circles coming in. We saw him out wide, out over the fields, out over that construction area, and then coming in much closer, and it appeared to be almost like checking the rooftops and maybe some of the corners of that mall from that vantage point up in the air.
Yeah, and it would certainly seem to indicate that police are looking for someone, and you know, the logical step there would be that they're looking for somebody who may have escaped on foot, somebody who may have initially carried this out and taken off. But again, we don't have those details at this point, and still waiting for more information from police. This is, for those of you just tuning in, initial reports of an active shooter at the Tanger Outlets in Glendale, near 95th Avenue and Glendale. We know of at least 2 people taken to the hospital with gunshot wounds, and all of the stores there being locked down. Glendale police asking that that people avoid the area if they can. Meantime, we've been watching a steady stream of people coming out of the mall as police appear to be methodically lifting that lockdown and going store to store to clear each store and make sure there's not a threat of a shooter. But we're looking at, looks like at least a couple of hundred people now in this parking lot who are standing there and waiting for something, and it's unclear if they're being held there by police. That certainly appears to be the case as police try to sort this out and just make sure that if they do have a suspect, if they do have somebody that they're still looking for, that this person hasn't somehow blended in with this crowd or escaped on foot.
Steve, we wanted to let you know that we have a witness on the phone with us right now, Rita Mizell. Rita, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Rita, tell us where you were and what you saw.
I had just parked in the parking lot at T18 heading into Nike's store, and halfway through to the entrance I saw people running out, and I wasn't sure if they were just leaving the store or what, because there was nobody screaming. A lady grabbed my arm, and I thought it was odd, and she said, come with me, there's a shooting. And before I could comprehend what she's saying, she's dragging me behind this wall. We hid behind the wall behind Nike's store, and there was a UPS truck standing there. We went behind the UPS truck to hide, and the driver came out of the back door store, and the lady that dragged me back there asked the UPS driver if he could drive us to safety because there was an active shooter at the mall. And he said, sure, jump in the truck. So we did. It was one of those big UPS vans. It was with a high step. So we climbed up there, and he drove us over by Renaissance Hotel, at the end of the hotel where all the eateries were. Later on, I found out the lady worked for Michael Kors, and she was just on a break, and she was sitting there at the bench with her back towards the store, and she said she heard the multiple gunshots, so she just ran. She didn't look back or anything, and she's the one that grabbed my hand and dragged me behind that wall, behind the Nike store.
Rita, you didn't see or hear any gunshots when you were there? You just saw people running basically in the aftermath.
I heard some, it didn't sound like gunshot. It sounded like balloons popping, you know how they pop. But I didn't think anything of it. I was totally oblivious to, you know, a gunshot. You know, it's broad daylight. And so until the lady grabbed my hand, I didn't know that it was gunshot that I was hearing.
Yeah, Rita, thank you very much for taking the time with us on the phone, and we are very, very glad you're safe. We do have an update from our Nicole Grigg that she just received from Glendale Police. She said that the primary searches have been completed, that secondary searches are now underway. That is likely the helicopter that we've been seeing circling around. No suspects are believed to be outstanding at this time. If you have loved ones at Tanger, you're being asked to go to the orange lot at the University of Phoenix Stadium to, State Farm Stadium to wait. State Farm Stadium to wait, the orange lot. Again, if you have loved ones that you believe were at the mall and may be waiting in the parking lot there, or waiting to be released out of any one of those 90+ stores or restaurants that are there.
Governor Doug Ducey putting on a tweet just about 5 minutes ago. We are working closely with Glendale PD to monitor the situation at Tanger Outlets, support law enforcement, and get updates on those who have suffered injuries. Our prayers are with those impacted and the brave law enforcement professionals responding to this emergency. This is one of those cases where everybody else runs away from the danger and law enforcement runs toward it. But the good news, it appears we don't have any suspects believed to be outstanding at this time. And so again, police are just trying to sort out exactly what happened here. They're probably going to take a lot of witness statements and talk to a lot of people just to try to sort out the timeline of events, exactly what happened and where. And that is a meticulous process that will likely take hours for police to really sort it out, especially with all of the potential witnesses that we have that were in that mall at the time. If that number of just a couple of victims that Nicole Grigg saw holds, really got to count ourselves pretty fortunate that there weren't more people hurt here, and certainly our thoughts and prayers are with those people who have been hurt, and hopefully they are doing okay. Yeah, and Glendale Police confirmed to us earlier that at least one person was injured. Our Nicole Grigg, who was on the ground there shortly after this happened earlier this afternoon, said she saw two people, a man and a woman, with gunshot wounds being loaded into an ambulance. We saw some of that video earlier of the ambulance making its way out of the Tanger Outlets there. That combined with the update that we just received from Glendale Police saying no suspects are believed to be outstanding at this time indicates that perhaps this was a situation between those two individuals. We do not have that confirmed. It just, between the statement and what our Nicole Grigg is telling us on the ground there, that seems to be the direction that this is going. And we see just a couple of officers as they make their way through the mall area, otherwise a very deserted, eerie-looking mall inside. This is one of those outdoor malls. You may be familiar with some of these places. There we see some more people apparently leaving the mall and being released from those stores. But a very difficult situation for police to respond to when you have all of these potential entrances, all of these people, and it's difficult to assess what's a threat and what is not, especially when you already have an active shooting situation and people who are hurt. And so it's going to take a long time for people to be able to clear all of these stores and for folks to reconnect with their loved ones. I'm sure there's a lot of communication going on between people on their phones and trying to reassure parents and worried relatives that everybody's okay here. But again, it's one of those things that it happened at, as Faye mentioned earlier, maybe one of the worst times of the year to do this, with tourist season, spring break, with so many people out and about on a beautiful day, and obviously very crowded mall, and with low transmission of COVID, more and more people are going out anyway, and so you've got that sort of perfect storm if somebody decides to carry out an attack, and that appears to be exactly what happened here. Yeah. And want to remind you one more time the information we just received from Glendale Police, that is, if you do have loved ones at the Tanger Outlet, that you can go to the orange parking lot at State Farm Stadium, and that is where police are asking you to wait right now. That if you do have loved ones there and you want to go into the area, they are asking you to please stay away from the Tanger Outlets. The last thing they need is more people coming into this area as they're trying to conduct their investigation and also get people out of these stores and these restaurants safely that have been on lockdown and that are slowly being released now, methodically going through that whole mall area
area one at a time. So if you do want to head out there, it is the orange parking lot at State Farm Stadium. Please do not get any closer and wait there.
It's been a little over an hour now since that initial report of a shooting, and we know from our Nicole Grigg on the ground she saw personally at least 2 people being taken away by ambulance. Glendale police have confirmed at least 1 victim, and we don't know how seriously that person is hurt. But this is a crowd that is growing in it looks like the west area parking lot of the Tanger Outlet Mall, and looks to be a solid 200 or 300 people now that have been taken out of the mall, and all of them being gathered in this area by police. We've seen groups of maybe 20, 30 people at a time coming out, which may indicate that they're just going store by store, very meticulously trying to make sure that they don't have an additional threat here. But Glendale police have said they don't believe that there are any suspects outstanding at this time. They're going through what they describe as secondary searches. And meantime, we've got a DPS helicopter doing a very low flyover rotation over the mall area in general and some of the surrounding areas as well.
And when we take a look at some of the video we have from the ground, images coming in from the ground, that you can see some of the emergency vehicles that are there. You can see the tremendous police presence. Anytime you hear about a gun and shots fired, especially in a crowded mall situation, obviously everyone's mind jumps to the worst possible situation, and obviously the police response is tremendous. Police being called in not only from the Glendale area but also the surrounding area. Again, we've seen that DPS helicopter making those big, slow, low circles around this area. Part of that secondary search that police say is now underway after that primary search has been completed a little over an hour after we first got the reports of shots fired at the Tanger Outlet malls off the 101 and Glendale there. And again, from witness statements and also from what our Nicole Grigg has told us, if you're familiar with the mall area, it appears that this happened somewhere close to the Nike store, Coach store, Michael Kors store. That kind of that part of the mall seems to be the most active part of the mall. We just heard from one of the witnesses who was there, who was going in from the parking lot, walking in, intending to go into the Nike store, and saw somebody came running out saying that there was a shooting and the shots had been fired, and the 2 women then ran to the relative safety of a low wall there, and then with the help of a UPS driver got out of that area, which certainly is the safe and smart thing to do in a situation like this. And we're just trying to get a feel for if this lockdown is being lifted. It looks like it's being lifted slowly, store by store, and that's going to be quite an undertaking because it is 90+ outlet stores there and a dozen restaurants.
Christine Stanwood is on scene right now for us, just arriving a few minutes ago. Christine, tell us where you are, what you can see, and what you know.
Well, we're at Glendale Ave and 95th Avenue, right on the corner. This is where they're having media being staged. I just touched base with Glendale Police. They're having another public information officer come and give us an update on a briefing. I asked, what can we confirm at this hour? And they said, check the latest Twitter post, and that is what you just read. Primary searches have been completed. Secondary searches are underway. No suspects are believed to be outstanding at this time. If you do have a loved one from Tanger Outlets, they have an update saying that they will be going to State Farm Stadium, Lot Orange. So if you do have someone that is inside Tanger Outlets, you need to be at that reunification point at State Farm Stadium, Lot Orange. Giving you a bird's eye perspective of what we're seeing here on the ground. I'm going to step out of the frame so you can see. Several blocks are blocked off, and this is very difficult to get to. We had to deal with that rush hour traffic in the middle of getting to the scene, taking about 40 minutes once we got those initial calls. You can see several police units. You can also see kind of there off in the distance to, let's say, the west of us where the outlets are. You can see a heavy police and fire response. You see troopers talking to people there on the street. Still a lot of preliminary reporting to be done as to what led up to this, what we do know. Again, this is from the ground, and you can see, Steve and Faye, I heard you guys talking about how low that chopper is. When it circles above us, it's very loud because it's still hanging quite low. We're going to work to get you more updates from here on the ground. For now, we're going to send it back to you in the studio.
And certainly looks like a lot of the search there is precautionary at this point. They've done a primary search. They haven't identified a threat. They say they don't have any outstanding suspects. At least that's their belief. But police are going to take every precaution here just to make sure that they don't have any additional threats. And they're going to have those eyes in the sky flying very low over Tanger Outlets just to make sure that they don't have anything that may have slipped through the cracks and may have been missing. And that's why we continue to see that DPS chopper flying so low over the scene, just a few hundred feet above the ground.
Yeah, and our Cliff Castle chopper, we're zoomed in a little bit right now, but we are actually much higher and further away, so not to impede their progress in any way and their search efforts in any way. The helicopter circling from the air, a massive police response on the ground. A lot of officers, a lot of first responders, firefighters, all in that area. Again, this all began about 2:45 this afternoon, so we're more than an hour into this now. And certainly the good news is that the police say that no suspects are believed to be outstanding at this time, but there is still that secondary search going on, and that's why we believe you're seeing the people who are being moved out of this mall area. I don't want to say evacuated anymore, but really allowed to get out of the stores and restaurants where they are and brought out to this parking lot here where they're kind of gathering and waiting to be given the final all clear. And potentially police certainly want to talk to anyone that has seen anything, heard anything, may know anything about exactly what went down a little over an hour ago there at the Tanger Outlets off the 101 and Glendale.
We should say there are differing reports too on the number of victims here. We're reporting 2 at this point because our reporter was there and not long after this happened and actually saw 2 people being taken with gunshot wounds into an ambulance. There are some reports that there may be an additional victim. We should confirm that Glendale police have not said at this point any more than 1 victim at this point, have not confirmed that. And so we are still working to get some additional information on just how many victims there may have been. And there are reports again of some of those victims possibly being children. Again, we have not been able to confirm that. Again, we've only confirmed that there's at least 1 victim. That's the official word from Glendale police. And so we're going to continue to work that information and try to find out more about what happened and get you some more information on the severity of those injuries. Obviously, gunshot wounds very, very serious, and those people have been taken off to the hospital very quickly, but we don't know just exactly how seriously they are hurt. We should also say that Glendale police, as Christine mentioned, have set up a media staging area. That's typically where they're going to give a briefing and give us a lot more detail on that. And we're going to continue to follow this well into our 4 o'clock newscast. And when that briefing happens, of course, we'll bring it to you at this point. Obviously, very active scene at this point, so please stay away from the Tanger Outlets area. Give police enough room to work. There's still a lot of traffic in the area, and police are still trying to sort things out. And so we want to give them as much space as they can so that they can sort this out and most importantly, get all of those folks who've been taken out of the mall back to their loved ones safely and be able to reunite with them, because that's going to be a process that will take some time.
Yeah, certainly. And we're also working to find out exactly what hospital the at least 2 victims that Nicole Grigg, who was on the ground there, saw being worked on and taken out by ambulance, what hospital they were taken to, what their condition is right now. At this point, we don't have that information. We're also working to find out exactly how many victims there were. Again, conflicting reports coming in on that situation. But very important, if you are watching this and you do have loved ones who may have been in the mall area or generally this part of town, please stay away from this. Don't. Sometimes the instinct, especially if you're a parent, is to get in your car and rush over to the scene because you're obviously concerned about your loved ones. That does not help police, and that does not help the situation right now. Again, right now, police believe that no suspects are outstanding at this time. If you do feel the need, you have to go out there. You're being asked by police to go to the orange parking lot at State Farm Stadium. It is very nearby, and to wait until everyone is released out of this area. But the last thing you want to do is go into this situation right now. You wouldn't even really be allowed close. So it is a tough thing to hear if you have loved ones you believe it to be working in this area or maybe spending the day out there, but it really is for the best.
Yeah, first thing you want to do is hug them and tell them that you love them and just know that they're okay and see them in the flesh and know that they're all right. And the frustrating part of that for so many of these these loved ones is that they're going to have to wait a while because police are going to try to sort this out. Anybody that saw anything, police are going to want to take a statement. They're going to want to piece this together very closely and make sure that they don't have any additional suspects. Again, no indication of that at this point, but there are still searches taking place. We still have that DPS helicopter. Police still have the area surrounded, and they are being very meticulous about who gets let out of that mall, although it appears now that some of these folks are actually being allowed to at least move in a different direction and possibly leave, and that would be some very good news.
Yeah, we don't see any of the cars moving yet. We do see some of the people being able to start leaving kind of the crowd that they were standing in that one part of the parking lot, and now they seem to be heading back to where their cars are. We haven't seen any of the just people who were in the parking lot, the cars there being allowed to leave, but this is certainly an indication that police are moving in that direction. We're also working to confirm if juveniles were actually involved in this, if there were children involved in this shooting in any way. There are some unconfirmed reports out there regarding that. We're working to track that down right now as well.
And we want to thank all of you who are joining us now for ABC 15 News at 4. We have been on the air now for the better part of an hour talking about that shooting at the Tanger Outlets in Glendale.
I want to take you up to our Cliff Castle chopper, and you can see one of the parking lots just adjacent to that mall, which is near 95th Avenue and Glendale. It's just west of the Westgate Mall. Get you right to the scene right now. There's a map for you giving you a better idea of exactly where this is. This is just off the 101 freeway that you see there on the left side of your screen. About 90 plus stores in that area, around 12 restaurants. Back up to our Cliff Castle chopper right now, and you can see a wide view of the people being released from the stores and the restaurants that are in that area. They were in lockdown about an hour ago. You also see the no, I take that back. That is not the helicopter that I thought we saw there for a moment. We've seen a DPS helicopter kind of circling the area very, very low. But it appears that some of the people and some of the cars now being released out of this area, so certainly a good sign.
People are being allowed to go home. Let's get right out to Christine Stanwood. She is live on the scene, just arriving a few minutes ago. Christine, we know this happened a little over an hour ago. Give us an idea and set the scene right now.
Sure, we're at 95th Avenue and Glendale Avenue. This is as close as media is able to get to the scene, with the scene right behind me. Getting you a closer look here on the ground. You can see through the trees, fire and police, their lights on. This is after reports of an active shooter. Now, we just got an update from Glendale Police. I spoke to them asking what is the latest update. They say that right now, if you did have somebody who was inside Tanger Outlets, they're going to have reunification at State Farm Stadium. That's going to be lot orange. Again, if you have a loved one who is inside Tanger Outlets, they're going to be in lot orange of State Farm Stadium. Also, as you can see on the ground, several troopers blocking off the area. So if you're traveling in this direction, it's going to be difficult to get in and out. You know, when we were here on scene, we heard and we felt that helicopter circling. Now that helicopter is gone, but it's still going to be a mess if you're out here. Again, several reports of the amount of people who were injured in the shooting. That has not been confirmed by Glendale Police at this hour. We're still waiting on that update. Yeah, in the meantime, guys, we're also getting an update from Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. He just announced an update a couple of minutes ago saying our prayers are with those impacted and brave law enforcement professionals responding to this emergency. We echo those thoughts here at ABC 15. You know, as we're here, we can also see several different agencies responding, and so we're going to work to get as much information as we can. Our photographer here on scene actually was pulled over by a woman who said that her daughter was inside the outlet when this happened. She asked if she was okay. So still a lot of families with a lot of questions this evening that we're going to work to get information for you that's accurate as best as we can. Reporting from the ground in Glendale, Christine Stanwood, ABC 15, Arizona.
Christine, can you talk a little bit about the body language on the people that you're seeing there in the area? Because it seems like things have settled down over the last hour and 15, 20 minutes now that we've been following this.
Yeah, exactly, Faye. You know, as close as we can get from people who are walking away from Westgate, you can see that we're still pretty much pushed back. But everybody that we do see walking away, they don't appear to be frantic at all. They seem fairly calm. You can see some people there waiting at the bus stand. Again, some people on the phone. It doesn't feel as chaotic as it did even 20 minutes ago. So hopefully that's a good sign that we're sensing here outside of Tanger Outlets.
Still a massive police presence surrounding that mall right now. Many of them Glendale police. We've also seen DPS officers doing everything from directing traffic to a DPS helicopter flying over that scene. So obviously there is, in any situation like this, multiple agencies that respond. Police have a network of systems that they can rely on where they can talk to different agencies and ask for extra officers. In some cases, firefighters may go and man a different station and answer other calls while firefighters in that area really tend to the scene, especially in cases where there are multiple victims. We know at least 2 people shot because of a report from Nicole Grigg, who is on the ground, was at the Tanger Outlets not long after this happened and saw those 2 people being taken into an ambulance. There are reports that there may be more victims out there and possibly reports that there may be juveniles. We have not confirmed that with Glendale police at this time. Right now, Glendale police, then, they are taking the point on media communications in this. They are saying 1 victim confirmed at this point, but this is a situation that appears to be in the secondary stages now as the initial search has been completed. There's still some primary searches and then this methodical opening of each store as they come off of lockdown, getting those people out of the mall, getting them to a safe place, making sure that they don't have any additional suspects or anybody else that may be a threat out there. But they've made clear they do not believe they have any outstanding suspects.
Yeah, and we are starting to get some more witness accounts coming into our ABC 15 newsroom right now. Let's go ahead and listen in for one person. What happened to them?
10 to 15 police vehicles, SUVs, all sorts, along with several paramedics that were just passing us by, and I kept asking, what is going on? We were all wondering what's going on. And just as we got to the 101 overpass, we saw officers on foot carrying riot rifles jumping the fence. And they were, everything looked pretty serious, and they were coming right by where we were at. So all traffic was trying to pull over to off of the road, including a couple of undercover officers that were right there in front of us. We had to go around.
All right, one person's perspective who was in the area when this all started going down about an hour and 20 minutes ago. I want to get back out to our Christine Stanwood on the scene live for us. Christine, what can you add?
Well, just another update from Glendale Police. They just a couple of minutes ago just said that the staging area for unification will be in lot red at State Farm Stadium. Previously, it was lot orange. So if you're tuning in right now and you're watching us, it was previously lot orange. It is now lot red if you're trying to meet a loved one who was inside Tanger Outlets. Also, police are saying that this is not an active shooter. It is an isolated incident. This is something new that we are working to confirm for you for the last couple of minutes. Again, this is not an active shooter. This is an isolated incident. Something that we were hoping that this scene had been calmed down. Faye and Steve, that something that you had asked, what's the feeling like? Does it feel like it's like being subdued a little bit? That does appear to be the case. Again, this is not an active shooter situation. This is an isolated incident.
Christine, one of the most concerning reports that we've been receiving this afternoon are unconfirmed reports that this could involve children or juveniles. Have you heard anything about that?
Faye, that's a great question. We're hearing mumblings of that here on the ground near the media staging area, but obviously we're not going to confirm anything that is not out of what police are wanting to disclose at this hour, just out of courtesy of any loved ones who are affected by this. We don't want to give out the wrong information, so once we do know and have confirmation on how many victims and the ages of those victims, there are some reports that they might be children, there might be some reports that they're victims in their 20s. Again, we're not going to go on the air and tell you something that's incorrect. So once we do have that confirmed by PD, we also have team coverage waiting to hear from police. We will bring that to you as soon as possible.
Christine Stanwood reporting live at the scene right now. Once again, a shooting situation at the Tanger Outlets happened about 2:45 now, so we're about an hour and a half into this investigation. And as we look at the Cliff Castle chopper, we are still seeing people filing out of the mall. That looks to be a tactical team actually right there, moving into the mall. So there may be still some searching taking place, although Glendale police have said there is no active search, at least primarily for a shooter, and they don't believe they have an outstanding suspect. So this is a tactical team either making their way in or moving out of the area. Those are the types of folks who train for this kind of thing all of the time, and they just want to make sure that they don't have additional shooters. It's an enormous task for police just to be able to sort out the confusion when you have hundreds of people at the mall, when you have a situation where you don't know if there's one shooter or multiple shooters, whether there's someone still carrying out attacks, whether that person may be hiding, or whether they've already escaped from the area. All of these are questions that police need to sort out. And when you have potentially hundreds, even more than 1,000 people at a mall like this at any given time during a day like this, they've got to be able to sort all of that out. The good news is it appears at least some people are being allowed now to leave the scene and reunite with loved ones, and that's going to be a welcome relief for anybody waiting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the newsroom continues to follow all angles of the story. We have multiple crews down on the ground there at the scene, and we also have former DPS Director Frank Milstead standing by. We're going to get to him after this break.
mass shootings have become a part of the landscape all across America, and police train for these kinds of things. So when you get an initial report like this, what's the response, and how do officers typically respond, especially when you have so many officers converging on scene at once?
So it's interesting, Steve. You go back to Columbine when that shooting happened. At the time, we were training and we were trying to form up. I'm sorry? They were at the time when Columbine happened. We were trying to form up teams and go in and take care of it that way. What we learned over time was that we really just needed to take the first initial officers that were on scene and try to neutralize the threat. So they do what's called bounding. They go in and they cover one another and they move as quickly as they can to where the shots are being fired and try to neutralize the threat. They don't even actually render aid to those who are already injured, trying to keep other people from being injured. Officers that follow and fire department people that follow, they take care of rendering aid as the initial officers on the scene go to neutralize the threat and make sure that no other lives are taken or damaged.
Obviously, a lot of families who are probably watching this and wanting to get in contact, wanting to reunite with their loved ones. But give us an idea of just the massive task that officers have just trying to clear an enormous facility like this.
Yeah, so they'll have to go room by room and clear it to make sure there is no one hiding and left behind. They'll also find that there's victims or those who were not involved that were hiding, and they have to liberate them from wherever their confines are. If you're a family member and you're out there and you're waiting, the best thing to do is just wait and let them go through systematically so nothing happens to anyone else. But also you have to look at the radio dispatchers, that you have multiple jurisdictions converging on a single location and managing that response. And we do a program that everyone kind of follows, that we have a coordinated response that follows a system that everyone can participate in, and all agencies across the state are trained in. It's called ICS. It's an incident command system, and we use that to respond to those calls.
And I'm sure that's something that comes in very handy in a situation like this. Colonel Frank Milstead, retired DPS director, thanks so much for joining us and giving us your insight. I appreciate it.
And our coverage continues as we take you up to the Cliff Castle chopper right now, as we have been watching this going on for about an hour and a half since we first became aware of this situation. We have heard from Glendale police telling our crews on the ground that they believe this was an isolated incident and that this was not an active shooter situation. And again, we've seen a number of people who were in that mall area being released out of that mall area, coming in small groups and then some in larger groups, making their way out to the parking lot. And then for a while they were essentially waiting there in the parking lot. And then we've seen those groups start to disperse a little bit, presumably heading back to their cars and trying to get out of the area. We do know that we have an update from Glendale Police as well regarding if you have a loved one there that perhaps needs a ride or that you're very concerned about. Again, you're asked not to go near the Tanger Outlets, but there is an area, the red parking lot at State Farm Stadium. That is, if you do need to go out there, if you do want to go out there, that is where you're being told to go and wait in that red parking lot at State Farm Stadium. And
the good news from Glendale Police, they say they do not believe that they have an active shooter on scene. There's no outstanding suspect. So if there is a person who carried out this shooting, it's not clear whether that person has been arrested or taken into custody, but police are indicating, at least at this point, that there is no active threat of anybody else out there. But what they do have to do, and this is going to be a long process, is go room by room, store by store, bit by bit, clearing every one of these places that's been locked down, making sure that there's nobody else who's been hurt, making sure that they don't have any additional threats. And that's just something that takes a lot of time, which is why we're seeing this play out, and a lot of people obviously very worried about their loved ones. Christine Stanwood is on scene. She is near the media staging area where we are hopefully getting an update from Glendale Police fairly shortly. Christine, still an active scene out there, and a lot of people just waiting to reconnect.
That's right. So we know that Nicole is going to be staged where that family reunification site is at. That is lot red at State Farm Stadium. Where we are is 95th Avenue and Glendale Avenue, where there is still several streets blocked off. We just got an update from Glendale PD. They said that there will be a media update in the next 8 minutes or so. So right after you hear from us, we're going to go over there and get an update from police, getting confirmation on the number of victims. Nicole Grigg has been reporting at least 2, and that's an eyewitness account. We still are unsure of how many and the ages of those victims. Stephen Fay, I can tell you, just trying to get to the scene was a headache because of some of that traffic getting home for several people. So if you're a family member who's trying to reunite with a loved one who was inside Tanger Outlets during this shooting, again, you will be going to Lot Red, and that's at State Farm Stadium. We're going to head over to the media staging site just to get an update from police. We're going to hopefully bring that to you live.
Thanks so much, Christine Stanwood, reporting from scene. We're going to send it to break. We are going to be back, though, and be monitoring for that media briefing coming up just minutes away.
Gotcha. This afternoon, police telling us this is an isolated incident and there is no active shooter at this moment. We are working to get the ages of those victims, but do not have that information at the moment.
Meantime, police continue to swarm that area. They say their primary search has been completed. They're doing secondary searches, and they are going store by store, bit by bit through this mall, and some 90 stores in this mall, slowly getting people out of those stores, getting them to safety. They were briefly gathered in this area on the west side of the mall, but we have since seen people being allowed to leave, at least on foot, and try to get to their loved ones and reunite with their loved ones. Glendale PD saying that those loved ones, there's a reunification area set up in the orange lots at the State Farm Stadium. Those orange lots are, I believe, to the south of the stadium.
I think we've just been updated on that. It's the red lot now that we are hearing. The red lot is going to be the reunification lot there at State Farm Stadium.
Meantime, these are some of the pictures of those folks as they are slowly being taken out of the store. So shortly after this happened, about 2:45, all of these stores went on lockdown, and then no additional reports of shots fired, but our Nicole Grigg was on scene very shortly after this happened, actually saw video, or actually saw people that were being taken into the ambulance, people with gunshot wounds. Nicole, I understand you are now standing by in that area where family are being urged to gather so that they can reunite with their loved ones.
Correct. So I can tell you that I am watching families right now with their kids in their hands walking from the Tanger Outlets, trying to get to their cars in the parking lot. Some people visibly upset. Others said that they didn't even know what was happening at the time because they were on the other side of the outlet. As you know, this is a really large outlet. We're talking, a couple dozen stores here. So the shooting, we believe, happened, at least where I saw the victims personally, in the front, kind of facing the Westgate Entertainment Center. So I can tell you that I saw a woman being loaded into a stretcher, obviously visibly hurt. We saw a young man as well, I would say late teens, maybe 20s. He was kind of sitting up and talking as he was getting inside that ambulance. But right now we're just seeing so many workers, some of them very young. As you know, they work in these retail jobs. I just talked to one kid, he's 19, works inside one of the stores right here. He said that they have a room in the back for something like this. The employees rushed to the back and they got there and locked the doors, and they waited until SWAT came to remove them. The parking lot that I'm in right now, I can tell you that police, SWAT teams were going around searching each car during the chaos of all this, trying to make sure that there was no one else hiding out. For a short time as these people who were leaving, I also saw police checking their vehicles. So, right now I'm staring at some young girls from Bath and Body Works who, were working as well. A lot of parents showed up here just trying to find their kids. Just saw a happy reunion. Any mother, as you can imagine, visibly upset, just getting to hug their child and knowing that they're okay.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation for people who live in that area and go to this area on a regular basis. It was just less than 2 years ago that we had a mass shooting and an active shooter situation at Westgate in May of 2020. Nicole, you were there for that shooting as well. A much different scene, it appears, here.
Yeah, and I arrived to both scenes. I live in the Glendale area, so both of those scenes, I was there within minutes. I can tell you that when I did arrive to the scene at the Tanger Outlets, I did see police kind of scaled back. I didn't see the full-blown authorities with their AK-47s in the front, but what I was watching the victims, and those were the two people I saw personally being loaded up. The one woman, I could hear her screaming and crying, but it just reminded me that, I could tell that she was in good hands with those authorities. They took her away right away, and like I said, that young man, he was kind of sitting up on the stretcher as they were putting him in the back of the ambulance.
And Nicole, there have been reports that there were children involved. That's not what you saw.
I did have have one man who was here before me say that he thought a child was involved. The young man I saw, I mean, he could have been a late teenager, but from what I gathered, he looked older. The woman, I did hear the ambulance saying she was an older adult female. So I can't confirm the children, but I know we're going to have a briefing update. I did hear possibly, a child was involved, but I did not see that. I'm told that ambulance took off before.
Something we are still working to confirm, and we are expecting, by the way, that briefing from Glendale Police to happen at any moment. They put out a tweet about 10 minutes ago saying that the briefing would be happening right about now. So obviously we're standing by to try to confirm some of these details.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break right now. Let Nicole go out and gather some more information and do some reporting out there, more reporting out there at the scene. And we will be back with more on this.
In 5, 4.
Does anybody need a sound check?
2. Hold it.
Officer Tiffany Galula, NGALULA, Glendale Police Department, Public Information Officer.
Getting back to our breaking news, Glendale Police holding a briefing expected to start in just a few seconds here as they give us some details on what happened today at the Tanger Outlet Mall. We know of a shooting and at least 3 people have been hurt. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon. Thank you for everyone for being here. First off, we want to let everyone know that we do not believe that there are any outstanding suspects in the area. However, we're still completing secondary searches at this time, and Tanger, the hotels, and Westgate are still on lockdown. So until an officer comes to one of those areas to release anyone who's inside, we suggest they stay inside in lockdown at this time. So to begin this afternoon at approximately 2:40, we had reports that there was a shooting at the Tanger Outlets at 95th Avenue in Glendale in the center of the shopping plaza. Information came in that there was possible multiple victims with gunshot injuries. We were able to locate 3 persons with gunshot injuries that were transported to local Valley hospitals. At this time, no one has passed away. We believe there's potentially at least 1 person with life-threatening injuries. We only know of 1 child, of the 3 victims being a child. We're still confirming ages of those persons. We're still sorting out how many victims, how many potential shooters there are, but we do not believe that there is anyone outstanding. We have officers conducting secondary searches. Primary searches have been completed. We've asked everyone that as we go through and ensure that each of the businesses is safe, they're gathering on the west side of the parking lot of Tanger. And as we sort out who is a victim, who is a witness, we're able to release them. So we ask that anyone who has a loved one that they know that is out here to gather and wait at 95th Avenue and Maryland in the north preferred parking lot at the stadium. Best routes to get there are going to be 91st Avenue to Maryland or off of the freeway, the Loop 101 on the Maryland exit. But we ask that everyone stay off of Glendale Avenue or 95th Avenue. Give me 1 second. We do know that this was a singular incident. Again, this was a singular incident between two groups of people. This was not an active shooter. Again, this was not an active shooter. It was an altercation that occurred between two groups of persons. It turned into a physical altercation and then a shooting. We have multiple Valley agencies that are out here assisting us with the secondary searches. Many investigators. It's going to take some time as we go through and speak to all of the persons that are out here, again, to sort out if we have any further victims or any witnesses to identify. This is going to go through the evening hours, potentially, but again, we ask everyone who is not involved to stay out of the area unless you're coming to wait for a loved one, again, and that's going to be 95th Avenue in Maryland.
We're hearing that one of the victims who has those life-threatening injuries could be a child. Can you confirm that that person who does have those life-threatening injuries is a child?
I believe that one of the victims is a child. Again, we know that we have 3 persons who were transported with injuries with gunshot wounds, and one was a small child.
Are any suspects in custody?
At this time, we are still sorting out who exactly are shooters and who exactly are victims. So that's still part of the investigation with this crime scene that is this large in capacity with this many people to talk to. We really have to confirm more information before we can identify who's who.
Can you talk about the lockdown situation that happened right after the shooting? Can you detail what that looked like?
You know, I wasn't out here, but I can tell you that we were able to put out information over social media almost immediately after the shooting information came out to advise people in the area to lock down, just to ensure that they're not out and about running around, especially until we could identify that, again, this was a singular incident between two parties and not an active shooter.
Any indication that it's gang related?
I have no indication of that at this time.
And what weapons were used?
I don't have any information on the weapons.
Can you talk about how many possible, you said it was an extensive area where this happened. Can you talk about how many rounds of bullets were probably?
We don't have any information to indicate how many rounds at this time. So just to let you know, I came over here before I was able to do the investigations briefing. So I tried to get as much information as possible to give you guys at least some information, because we know there are so many people out there that have a loved one that's potentially over here. There are hundreds of employees and customers, and we just want to make sure that the public knows that we're doing everything we can to ensure that there are no further victims.
We appreciate the update. Well, you said that the shooting occurred at the central part of the outlets. Can you be more specific? Was it a food court? What was it?
I don't believe there's a food court here
Okay.
necessarily, but it's just the center of the Tanger Outlets. There's multiple businesses over there. I'm not sure exactly how many scenes or potential, how far it went out.
Age range of victims? You said one
I
child.
don't have an age range. They all seem to be very young, so we can't confirm if there's more than one juvenile.
Okay. Can you talk about any previous incidents that have happened here, shootings at this particular center, and is that a cause of concern for anybody shopping?
I don't have any information on any other shootings at Tanger. We did have a shooting at an active shooter incident that happened at Westgate a few years ago, and we were able to take that suspect into custody, and there were no persons that passed away from that, but again, a very traumatic incident for everyone involved.
You mentioned sorting out witnesses and also victims. How does that work for you? Walk us through that.
So anybody who feels like they had a gun pointed at them could be a victim of aggravated assault. So we have to talk to each individual, and there are hundreds of people here, before we can identify if they were a potential victim. If anybody has any other types of injuries, they may not be gunshot wounds. There might have been some sort of physical altercation. So we have to talk to everybody involved. And again, this is going to be a very extensive investigation that's going to go through the evening.
Can you give us the gender of the young child?
You know, I don't have that. It's gone back and forth which one it was. I think it's a very chaotic scene. So when you have a lot of witnesses, everybody has their own interpretation of what happened because you have different perspectives and viewpoints. So it's hard to confirm that information.
Can you talk about chaotic scene? You just said that. What does that effort look like for police, first responders, arriving to what you don't know?
It's absolutely a coordinated effort. So we have other West Valley agencies out here. We also have the Department of Public Safety. We have several tactical units, and that is just every agency out here working together to ensure the safety of everyone. So they're going door to door. They are ensuring that we, again, have no further victims. They're making sure that everyone is safe and feels safe to come out.
Are they currently doing that right now? Is the SWAT?
The secondary searches are going on as we speak. As we walked over here, they were still going.
Are they also doing that at the hotels?
That's correct. So we're going to also be continuing those searches out at Westgate and at the hotels, and it is for precautionary. Again, we do not believe that there are any shooters outstanding.
At this point, was there more than one shooter? Do we know that yet?
We are still sorting that out. It's, like I said, it's a very chaotic scene. We're still trying to determine who exactly are shooters, who exactly are victims, but we did have 3 injuries that were transported.
All right, guys, we're going to have to go back to the briefing.
Were any officers or security at the time of the shooting?
I don't have that information. I apologize.
We're gonna
Quick for reunification for families, just that information. Can you please detail what that looks like?
Absolutely. So as detectives are able to identify and talk to each of the individuals that are over in the parking lot, again, that's hundreds of people. So they try to identify what role, if they were a victim, if they were a witness, if they were just a shopper and were told to lock down. So the less involved they were, the more likely they are to get out of here sooner. There's potential that we are going to be busing people if they can't get to their vehicles. They're going to be going over to the North Preferred parking lot at the stadium at 95th Avenue and Maryland. Again, we need people to access that from 91st Avenue or from the Maryland exit off the Loop 101.
American Red Cross on scene, do you know?
I don't have that information. I apologize.
So we're going to head back to the briefing. We are going to try and update you guys as soon as possible when we get more information. We're going to ask you guys to remain here, monitor our Twitter accounts.
Okay, as we're wrapping up this news conference now, we're getting new information from Glendale Police. We know that the Tanger Outlets and also Westgate are still on lockdown at this hour, that the shooting that happened around 2:40 this afternoon involved at least 3 victims right now. We're told one has potentially life-threatening injuries. One is a small child. We don't know the age just yet. That's one of the things we are waiting on. And police are still trying to determine the shooter from the victim in all of this.
And we'll be back with more after this.
friends to pick up those people who are either working or at the mall at the time of this shooting. Again, not an active shooter. They are just saying right now that it was two parties that got into some sort of argument that led to a physical fight and then someone firing a gun. We know 3 people were injured, 1 with life-threatening injuries. But again, if you have people who are at this mall right now, if you're wondering where you can get in touch with them, where you can pick them up, some are being interviewed by police. We know this could take a while, but get in touch with them. And then there will likely be north of State Farm Stadium in the west or north lots highlighted here in red. Faye, Steve, we're going to continue our coverage to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We're hearing from police that there are hundreds of people that they need to interview. They need to decide if they have any information that'll be relevant to their investigation or if there are other potential victims out there. And they made a note to say that victims aren't always just gunshot wounds in this case. They could be people who were injured in other ways, possibly as they were trying to flee this mall area.
Yeah. And if somebody points a gun at you, you are a victim of assault, at least under the law. So that's one of the things that they are going to be checking out, but obviously taking witness statements and all of that. Important to note here that police have now confirmed that one of the victims is a small child, and that child has been taken to the hospital. They have not been able to confirm if the victim with life-threatening injuries is indeed that child. We are working to gather more details, but obviously hoping and praying that that small child is okay, because it appears that that child was taken from the scene very, very quickly. We were actually able to see the other 2 victims being taken from the scene. It did not appear that those injuries were as serious as a life-threatening injury. But again, we're still trying to connect the dots and make sure that we can confirm this information. But a small child taken from the scene, there is at least 1 victim with life-threatening injuries, and we're still trying to gather more information on that. As we look at some of this video, you can see some of this crime scene tape going up around an area in the mall that looks like sort of a sitting area, lounge area, that sort of thing. That it's unclear whether that is the actual place where the shooting took place, but Glendale police are saying that this took place essentially right in the center area of the mall, and it was a dispute between 2 parties, and again, a number of shots fired and at least 3 people hurt by this. Again, it's difficult to say exactly what to know and what not to know at this point, but police are certainly being very meticulous about going through each and every one of these stores and talking to anybody and everybody that was at that mall to make sure that they can gather as much information and detail as possible and piece this together.
Yeah, all 3 people that had gunshot wounds we know were transported to the hospital. Glendale police at this hour reporting that as far as the information they have, all 3 of those people are still alive, but 1 potentially life-threatening injuries. We do not, again, have an age on that small child involved in this, one of the victims. One of the other pieces of information that we'll be trying to track down throughout the evening is some information on the weapon. What kind of weapon was used, if there was only 1 weapon used, and how many rounds are fired as a result of this. We do know that both the Tanger Outlets and Westgate Mall are still on lockdown right now. And as you take a look at this, you can see there are a lot of people slowly being released out of this area and making their way into the parking lots to their cars. But this is going to be a very long evening for them, very long evening certainly for police, because they do have a lot of interviews to do as a result of this. Again, 2 groups of people getting into some sort of physical altercation around 2:40 this afternoon, and then this shooting occurred at the center area of the Tanger Outlet Mall there near 95th Avenue and Glendale.
And police are saying some things that may not seem to jive with one another. You've got in one case they're saying that they are sorting out whether this was 1 or more shooters, but they're also saying they don't believe they have a suspect outstanding, so there's no threat to anybody in the area. Nonetheless, they take every caution here, so they've not only locked down every store in the Tanger Outlets, but also the hotels, and they're urging people to stay away from this area. They're keeping the media even out of the parking lot for the Tanger Outlets at this point, and moving them to a staging area that's not far away. And so police still have a long investigation ahead here, and multiple agencies are involved in that. And you can expect this to take a while, but the good news is that most people have phones with them. They're able to at least connect with their loved ones, let them know they are okay, but I'm sure it's excruciating just waiting for them to make their way out of here. It does not appear at this point that we still have that DPS chopper circling overhead, and we saw that earlier as if they may have been searching for someone else, somebody who may have fled the scene on foot. But again, we don't see that chopper in the area right now. Haven't heard any indication that it's there. And again, a lot of these families just gathering and waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And being reunited with loved ones in that preferred parking lot area outside of State Farm Stadium right now. We're going to continue to investigate here in the ABC 15 newsroom, track the latest information coming from Glendale. We'll be right back.
searches that involves clearing all of these different stores, some 90 different stores inside the mall, and then talking to the people who've been hiding out in those stores, locked down for a good couple of hours now. And we have watched as they steadily release those people so that they can go on foot and reunite with their loved ones. Glendale police even saying they may have to bus some people from this area over to that area on the north side of State Farm Stadium where they can reunite.
We have multiple crews on the ground, including our Christine Stanwood. Let's get out to her right now. Christine, we know that the Tanger and Westgate outlets continue to be in lockdown right now, although police are slowly releasing the people that have been inside those stores and restaurants.
That's right, and that's what Steve was saying about that secondary search. They're trying to sort through who are witnesses, who are victims in this case, because police say that if you had a gun pointed at you, then you are classified as victim. We're just in the media staging area. This is at Cabela's, and this is as close to the scene as we can get, just in case they want to provide another update. We asked several questions during that police press conference, including what are the ages of the victims, what are the genders of the victims. There are still a lot of unknowns at this hour, but again, as you mentioned, at least 3 victims, including 1 child. We asked if the child was the one who had suffered those life-threatening injuries. They were not able to confirm that. We asked the gender of the child. They were not able to confirm that either. I also asked what sort of weapons were used in that altercation between those 2 groups. They mentioned guns, obviously gunshot wounds, but we don't know the type of guns that were used. Again, police saying that this was not an active shooter situation. This was an isolated incident between a fight between 2 groups inside Tanger Outlets. It all started around 2:40 this afternoon, and it happened in the middle of the outlets. Right now, they're asking anyone who is being released, and they're going to that reunification area in the red lot of State Farm Stadium, that they're asking you to gather and wait at 95th Avenue in Maryland, and they're asking you to stay off Glendale Avenue. And Glendale Avenue, by the way, is just right behind us. At this hour, they also said that this is going to be an investigation going into the evening hours, so we could be positioned here for quite some time as police continue their investigation. We also asked, what kind of manpower does this take when you respond to an incident like this, when you're walking into something unknown? They said that they did their best to alert their community via Twitter, using that resource as they could. Again, still a lot of unanswered questions. Why did this fight break out? At the ages of the victims, and how many shooters are involved in this situation in particular. We're going to work to answer those questions for you throughout the entire evening and into this upcoming week. Reporting in Glendale, Christine Stanwood, ABC 15, Arizona.
It's a terrifying situation taking place in a very public place at a very public time when a lot of kids are out of school, a lot of people are on spring break, a beautiful day when people would want to get out and shop and do those kinds of things. So there were hundreds of people in this mall at the time, but it looks like at least many of them unharmed and able to reunite with their loved ones.
And we want to continue our coverage on the ground now with our Nicole Grigg. She is at that lot outside of State Farm Stadium where family members are being able to reunite there with the people who were at the mall. Nicole, take it away.
Yeah, I've been out in this parking lot for hours now from when police still had the scene extremely locked down. I can tell you that this is the parking lot that authorities were taking those children out, the workers out, the families, and the people who were here at the outlet. I talked to one guy who works at one of the stores, and he told me that when they heard the shooting, they are trained to go to the back and they have a deadbolt lock. So all those employees and any customers who were in there knew what to do and went to the back. People with their young children. I saw one woman with a stroller with a newborn. You can see this scene over here. This is the area that I first arrived at, where we saw a woman being put on that stretcher and taken by ambulance. You could hear her screaming, visibly in pain. I can tell you that then we saw a second victim. That's when we saw that younger man man, not the child. He was already gone before the time I arrived on scene, but a witness did tell me that that little boy was young. They saw him being put in the ambulance. That whole area, to give you an idea where that is right now, that's kind of by Banana Republic over outside the Coach Outlet. Hundreds of people here, as you said. The parking lot was full, and then you saw families arriving, just waiting, trying to reach their loved ones. I can tell you, I stayed with one mother the whole entire time, and she waited to get that text message that her daughter was okay, but then after that she had to be questioned, and it took quite a bit of time, you know, to get her back over here. You can see some of these, the Phoenix Fire Department leaving right now because there are just so many jurisdictions out here. A really chaotic scene for quite some time. I can tell you that those law enforcement officials, they were going around with their AK-47s, going up to each vehicle, looking in it, shining their guns, and then even as the employees were leaving, they were still stopping them as they were in their car to drive out, to question them a second time, because we know that they were on the back of the building standing out there for quite some time. I can tell you that that mother who I was standing with, as soon as she could hug her daughter, visibly shaken, as you can imagine any mother getting a text message from their young child. A lot of these workers are retail workers, high school age. She just couldn't believe what she was reading, and she was just glad that she was able to hug and embrace her daughter.
Nicole, are you seeing more people being released? We've been watching the Cliff Castle chopper as police slowly release people into the parking lot, and then we've seen some of those people starting to disperse. Are you seeing cars leaving the area now as well? Does it seem like they're processing them fairly quickly? And about how long is it taking to interview each person?
You know, we just saw one woman who was walking to the corner kind of towards the Cardinals Stadium because she said that her car is inside the crime scene. But if you take a look at the parking lot, there's not too many cars here right now. Basically, once everyone got the all clear, I saw hundreds of people kind of swarming and walking out. Many of them, like I said, with their children. And as you can imagine, they just want to get home and try to process what just happened here today.
Yeah, it's got to be nerve-wracking for people. And we want to welcome all of our viewers for ABC 15 News at 5, normally tuning in at this hour. Just to give you an update on what's happened at this moment. About 2:40 this afternoon, shots ring out at the Tanger Outlets Mall in Glendale, right next to the Westgate Mall. And we know at least 3 people have been shot, one of them with life-threatening injuries. And we're told those victims also include what police have described as a small child. However, at this point, we do not have an active shooter. Police say there are no outstanding suspects, although they are still trying to sort out whether there was one shooter or multiple shooters. But still a very active crime scene right now.
Yeah, and witnesses telling our Nicole Grigg that that young child was a young boy. We don't have that confirmed from police just yet, but we do know this started with 2 groups of people. According to Glendale police, they got into some sort of physical altercation, and then that shooting happened again. It was in the central part of the Tanger Outlets. Hundreds of people at the mall at that time. Both the Tanger Outlets and the Westgate Mall going into lockdown. Just a terrifying situation, really, for so many people out there.
Ashley Perez is standing by in the area where families are supposed to gather to reunite with their loved ones. This is on the north side of State Farm Stadium in what's described as the North Preferred lot. Ashley, what can you tell us? It looks like a pretty empty parking lot behind you.
Yeah, you know, it's relatively quiet here compared to the Tanger Outlet parking lot as well as Westgate Mall. Over here, this is where the families of the people who were at the mall stuck there, or possibly the victims, have to wait. So for about 4 minutes away it took to get over here to State Farm Stadium, the North Preferred parking lot. There are some cars coming in. You can see right behind me, police have started parking here and kind of directing traffic. But not too many cars just yet, but I want my photographer to pan over here in just a little bit. You can see more of the cars on the left side. Over my shoulder, you can see some of the cars waiting there, but a lot of people, I think, still trying to get out of the parking lot there at the Tanger Outlets and Westgate Mall to be able to come over here. It was very chaotic over there in that area. It took me quite a while to come over here near State Farm Stadium, where it is relatively quiet, but a lot of people even driving down the street, they're unaware of the situation, not sure what's going on, which is kind of building traffic up as well, because people are stopping, they're looking, they're trying to go in and park to ask questions to find out. But families that do have loved ones that were at the Tanger Outlets or the Westgate Mall, they can come here, North Preferred Parking at State Farm Stadium off North 95th in Maryland. Back to you for now.
All right, thanks very much for that update, Ashley. We appreciate it. And again, we have Christine Stanwood also standing by right now. We've been checking in with you, Christine, throughout the afternoon. We know police were very quick to tell us that this was an isolated incident and not an active shooter situation.
Right, Faye, because that's the biggest concern that everybody had when we were hearing reports of what was happening. We were all praying that this was not an active shooter situation, but we just got that confirmation that this was an isolated incident between two different groups. Police not saying that this is related to any gang activity. You know, I asked them what led up to the shooting, what led up to that fight. They weren't able to give us that information. As you know, the investigation is still very preliminary since this happened about 2:40 in the middle of Tanger Outlets. You can still see a small scene behind me. I'm going to step out of the way so you can zoom in and see a little bit of police lights. I'm unsure if you can see. We're pushed back pretty far away from the media briefing area. But, you know, as you can imagine, a lot of people are trying to communicate with their loved ones via social media, trying to see, you know, if you have a loved one that works at Tanger Outlets, letting them know if they're safe or not. This is the power of social media, informing people if they are safe. Just checking to see if we get any updates from officials. That also includes Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. He did respond to the incident a couple of minutes ago, saying our prayers are with those impacted and the brave law enforcement professionals responding to this emergency. I was able to even ask them, the PIO on scene, what does it take when you hear those first calls for a shooting at a public area like a outlet mall? And they say that it does take a large response. They had police on scene, they had fire on scene, and they're just trying to now do that secondary search that involves trying to interview any witnesses, anybody who may have been impacted by the shooting that affected hundreds of people inside Tanger Outlets, many of whom were just trying to enjoy a beautiful Wednesday with their loved ones, especially a lot of workers who Nicole mentioned are young, working at Tanger Outlets. There are still a lot of unknowns in this situation, including the age ranges of the victims. Again, one person with life-threatening injuries. At this point, police are saying that no one has been killed in this situation. Once we do get updates, this is where we're going to be staged for police. So once we do have any more information, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Reporting in Glendale, Christine Stanwood, ABC 15, Arizona.
Christine, thank you very much. You know, one of the things that I thought was interesting when you were speaking with Colonel Frank Milstead, the former DPS director, earlier today, about the law enforcement response that we saw and the strategy and how that strategy has changed in the years since Columbine.
Yeah, certainly they've learned quite a bit from mass shootings, and so if they believe that they are in a mass shooting situation and they have an active shooter, that means that time is of the essence. And so officers have now been trained, rather than waiting outside and setting up a perimeter, to go in, try to find the threat, try to eliminate that threat, and save as many lives as possible. And police have told us this in the past too. What they would do in a mass shooting situation like this is quite literally walk past people who may be hurt or wounded and make their way to find that shooter as quickly as possible. And that's what police did in this case. But very early on, it appears that they realized they had a two-party shooting here, not a mass shooting, not a random shooting, and that they did not have a threat to deal with. And so then it becomes a situation of just making sure there are not additional shooters, that there isn't some larger plot at work here, and that they obviously can tend to the victims and then begin to clear the area and make sure that there isn't anybody else who's hurt, anybody else who's been victimized by this. And that's the way training has changed over the years for these kinds of things. And he also touched a little bit about the fact that when when you have this many officers showing up at a scene, obviously other things need to be covered, and that's where they have what they call an ICS, an incident command system that is in place so that these agencies can call in help from other areas like nearby agencies, for instance, Peoria or DPS, just helping out on the scene. We've clearly seen that happening here.
Yeah, certainly. And as we continue to take a look at live pictures from our Cliff Castle chopper, there you can see there are still quite a few cars in that parking lot, and police warned us that they are going to be out there throughout the evening conducting this investigation, trying to find if there are any other victims, anyone who may have had a gun pointed at them, had anything else happen to them, who may have seen something, heard something that can give a better picture, a clearer picture of exactly what happened here, who the shooter is, who the victims are, and also we're waiting to get a little more information about that child who is the victim. We're just being told a small child. Witnesses on the scene again telling one of our reporters that they believe it was a young boy, no age being given to us right now.
Nicole Grigg was one of the first reporters on the scene. She lives in the area. You were just actually, Nicole, you were just in the area, right? You were in that area, and then this all happened, and you were very close by, and so you just did what reporters do and showed up at the scene.
Yeah, I live literally just less than 5 minutes away from this area. We could hear. I followed an ambulance to this location, and I believe it was one of the same ambulances that I watched them put one of those victims in. So what you're looking at right now, that area where you see the flashing lights, Glendale Police right now, that's the area that I arrived in, and that's where a woman was in between two different like patio chairs laying on the ground, and she had paramedics around her treating her, they put her on a stretcher and put her in the ambulance. Right after that, we then saw a man, a younger guy, he was not a child, he was put on a stretcher as well. He was kind of sitting up and talking, more alert, but that child that I did see, that I did not see, witnesses here told me that they saw him being rushed out of here right away. But we've been talking to witnesses who have been leaving Tanger Outlets. Here's what one of them had to say. But what did you guys see?
It was just constantly people running. When we started to see that everyone was running, we were thinking that it was probably a potential lockdown. Until we got notice that it was. Me being one of the managers, we had to make sure that, like, everyone was safely back into the stock room, making sure that, like, everyone was all good, everyone was safe. But yeah, it's honestly like something crazy, like you wouldn't expect it to happen, you know.
Were you working?
But yes, I was. I was off the clock getting out of my break. When the moment that I heard all this, I was like, okay, I need to get to action, and everything got done.
Where did you guys go during this time? Did you lock down? Did you hide in a closet? Like, where did you go?
We have like a spot in the back where we have this thing called a night lock, but we set down so no one can get in. The only way to get out is if we pretty much open it ourselves. But making sure like the store is locked, then it was where we were at, where it was locked, everyone keeping quiet, everyone was safe. But yeah, it's honestly crazy.
And so that young man you were just hearing, he's only 19 years old, has been working here for a little bit, trying to process everything that just happened here. We're live in Glendale. Nicole Grigg, ABC 15, Arizona.
Thanks so much, Nicole, and we have team coverage for you on this developing story still ahead, and obviously following the latest. You can see that on abc15.com. We'll be back with more live reports and updated information after the break.
You're watching ABC 15 Arizona, your breaking news leader.
9th Avenue and Glendale. This is part of the shooting investigation regarding the shooting that happened around 2:40 this afternoon at the Tanger Outlets. The Tanger Outlets, as well as the Westgate Mall, they're on lockdown. Police slowly releasing people. We know 3 people have gunshot wounds, including a young child. Glendale police updating us just a short time ago, saying that one of the victims has potentially life-threatening injuries. It is unclear if that is that young child. We are hearing that all of the victims have been taken to Dignity Health Care.
Now, this vehicle, we don't know exactly what its purpose is in this investigation. The police have not confirmed whether this is a suspect vehicle or somebody that may have been involved in it. But anytime you see the crime scene tape set up, police are going to go over that with a fine-tooth comb and just make sure that they gather all the evidence there. And it's obviously something that they want to preserve, and that's why they have set out that crime scene tape. Once again, still working to confirm exactly the condition of the victims, including that very young child, we're told, that was taken away almost immediately from the scene.
Yeah, we're going to continue to track this both here in the ABC 15 newsroom and with our multiple crews on the ground. But we want to get to some other headlines of the day now. President Biden has arrived in Europe ahead of tomorrow's NATO summit. The president and world leaders expected to announce a new package of sanctions on Russia and to tighten existing ones. White House signaling this will be a new effort to crack down on countries helping Russia get around the previous sanctions.
The first female U.S. Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, has died at the age of 84. She passed away after a battle with cancer. Albright was a central figure in President Bill Clinton's administration. She served as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations before becoming the nation's top diplomat in Clinton's second term. As Secretary of State, Albright championed the expansion of NATO and pushed for the alliance to intervene in the Balkans to stop genocide and ethnic cleansing. Honoring our fallen war heroes. Today, a ceremony held at Piestewa Park for Gold Star families and Lori Piestewa. Piestewa was killed in an ambush during the opening days of the Iraq War. She was the first Native American woman to die in combat, and Piestewa Peak is now named after her. Lori's family and fellow soldiers who survived the attack were all in attendance. Intel out with a new workforce plan. One of the biggest international tech companies wants to increase its inclusivity and diversity. They want to increase women and minority roles in the company to senior roles. Intel plans to help by offering new programs to its employees